One of the very first books which I read, which was a kind of a mind expanding experience for me, I did physics when I was at university, not too far from computing. And I have to say that one of the things which I read, which is slightly off topic for me, was a book which introduced me to philosophy for the first time. And that opens up a whole realm of questions which I'd always been racing around my own mind and never really found much of the way of an answer. And it's a great discovery to find that many people had already been thinking about these questions which have been plaguing you for hundreds, if not thousands, of years, and coming up with answers which may actually be far better than you could have thought up for yourself. So, my first discovery of the realm of philosophy was through a philosopher called Karl Popper. He was a philosopher of science, amongst many other things, and history too, and of Marxism and of many other topics. A great critic of Marxism, in actual fact. And I started off my journey on by picking up one of his books. In fact, I still have the very same book which I bought all those years ago, which I've kept on my shelves for some time here. It's called Unended Quest, and it is says the intellectual autobiography of Karl Popper. It's been a remarkable document of intellectual history, says one reviewer, and as someone puts down here, there is no philosopher writing in English who can match Karl Popper in range or in the quality of his work. Politics, science, art, in fact, few broad areas of human thought remain unilluminated by Popper's works. And certainly he has introduced the idea and solved some of the problems of philosophy, particularly he claims to have solved the problem of induction, which he'll tell you all about if you read the book, and also a definition, provided a definition of what really is scientific and what is not scientific. He again draws up that distinction. He also looked at a wide range of things like, as I say, Marx and totalitarian systems of government, Plato as well, which he traced that back to, and Plato's Republic. You can read all of these things. And these are maybe ideas completely new to you, and you might think, what's it got to do with me? Well, if understanding the world in which you live and understanding what life is about, and if understanding what is scientific and what is not scientific are important to you, then these are the things you may want to look at. Now, if they're not important to you, then you may want to look at something else instead. And that's fair enough. We all have different interests. But if you have an interest in widening out your own understanding of the world, and indeed your own understanding of yourself, then one good place to start would be this quest. Let me read to you a couple of passages from it to give you an idea of what it's like. It's quite a short book, really. It's about 250 pages long, and it starts off with a discussion of what he was like when he was 20. When I was 20, I became apprenticed to an old master cabinet maker in Vienna, whose name was Albert Posch, and I worked with him from 1922 to 1924, not long after the First World War. He looked exactly like Georges Clemenceau, but he was a very mild and kind man, and after I'd gained his confidence, he would often, when we were alone in his workshop, give me the benefit of his inexhaustible store of knowledge. Once he told me that he'd worked on, for many years, various models of a perpetual motion machine, adding amusingly, "They say you can't make it, but once it's been made, they'll talk different." A favourite practice of his was to ask me a historical question, and to answer it himself when it turned out that I didn't know the answer, although I, his pupil, was a university student, a fact of which he was very proud. "And do you know," he would ask, "who invented top boots? You don't. It was Wallenstein, the Duke of Friedland, during the 30 Years' War." And after one or two even more difficult questions posed by himself, and triumphantly answered by himself, my master would say almost with pride, "There, you can ask me whatever you like. I know everything." I believe I learned more about the theory of knowledge from my dear omniscient master Albert Posch than from any of them other of my teachers. None did so much to turn me into a disciple of Socrates, for it was my master who taught me not only how very little I knew, but also that any wisdom to which I might ever aspire could consist only in realizing more fully the infinity of my own ignorance. And that's an important grasping a step to grasp, to get hold of. I'll pick out one more passage to give you an idea of what he wrote about. He was keen to explore the world, like many people are, and he wrote a book called The Logic of Scientific Discovery. That was his first book, and in it he lays down the principles of what marks out science from non-science, sometimes nonsense, and he also explains to some of the philosophical problems which he looked at and thought about. There was one passage in here which I thought I could find about the kind of problems which he faced. Early philosophical problem. This one was about infinity. I've long believed that there are more genuine philosophical problems which are not mere puzzles arising out of the misuse of language. Some of these problems are childishly obvious, and it will so happen that I stumbled upon one when I was still a child, probably about the age of 8. Somehow I had heard about the solar system and the infinity of space, no doubt of Newtonian space, and I was worried. I could neither imagine that space was finite, for what then was outside it, if it was finite, nor that it was infinite. How do you grasp that? My father suggested that I ask one of his brothers, who told me he was very good at explaining such things. This uncle asked me first whether I had any trouble about a sequence of numbers going on and on and on. I had not. He then asked me to imagine a stack of bricks, and to ask it to add one brick and again one more brick, and so on without end. It would never fill the space of the universe. I agreed, somewhat reluctantly, that this was a very helpful answer, though I was not completely happy about it. Of course, I was unable to formulate the misgivings I still felt. It was the difference between potential and actual infinity, and the impossibility of reducing the actual infinity to the potential. The problem is, of course, part of Kant's first antinomy, and is, especially the temporal part, a serious and still unsolved philosophical problem. And he goes on to describe how he hadn't realized that there were still many unsolved philosophical problems, that he thought most of the problems were already solved in the world, and that he simply didn't know what the answers were, but then discovered by pursuing them himself that maybe he could make his own contribution to that. Well, this takes us into the realm of Marxism, science. It takes you into the realm of physics. It takes you into the realms of music and art, the theory of knowledge, logical positivism, objectivity, historicism, theories, quantum mechanics, debates with Schrödinger, because he was around at the time of all the great physicists, the arrow of time, Boltzmann, the subject of entropy, Darwinism as metaphysics. These are difficult issues. And of course the body-mind problem. What is the connection between the mind and the body? All of these are covered in this very small, simple book. And if you've not understood or grappled with these kind of problems before, all I can say is it's a mind-expanding and a mind-opening book in that area. It says here that it's a splendid introduction to the man and his ideas. I read it when I was about 20 for the first time, and I still remember that having read it once, it opened up a whole new world for me. It might open up a whole new world for you too, if you're interested in these kind of topics. Karl Popper, Unended Quest.